Okay, this is part 4 from this book, How to Raise IQ and Become a Genius by me, Pete Rogers. And what we're doing here is we're developing a sense of metacognition. Metacognition means to be able to think about your thinking, because the more aware you are of how you're thinking and how you're doing intellectually, the more you can improve your academic skills. And this also relates to, now if you're on a computer, you might want to look this up in your browser. Just type into your browser, 6 blind men and an elephant. And you'll see 6 blind men come up to an elephant. One grabs the tail and says, "Oh my gosh, it's a rope." Another one grabs the elephant's ear and says, "Oh, it's just a rug." Another one touches the side of the elephant and says, "It's a wall." One grabs its leg, says it's a tree trunk. And the point I'm making is that that's a lot of times what it's like when you encounter a new problem, a new complex topic. And so you want to reserve judgment. Don't leap to a conclusion. Just analyze the different little parts of it. And where you want to make yourself is here. Now type this next painting into your browser. It is The Wanderer Above the Sea Fog. Wanderer Above the Sea Fog by Caspar David Friedrich. And that's where the man is standing with his back towards us. A painting where the man's back is towards us is called a Rückenfolger. And what it means is you almost see yourself into the painting, whereby he's looking from a high peak down above the sea fog, misty valley. And he now has an objective view of the situation, like a bird's eye view from above. And that's what you want to get towards an intellectual situation. And I think that's what I developed as an approach to academics. You know, like when I was a little freshman at Stanford, I was scared shitless I'm going to flunk out of school. And I really don't know what to do. I know I got to study a lot. And I was worried about the class. But then by my second year, I had really developed good memorization skills, good study skills, good time management, good note-taking skills, etc. I went to the class fully, expecting to get an A, maybe an A+. So that's what I'm talking about when you have a full awareness. Basically, what is school? Most classes in a high school or college and even grad school are usually just memorization. So you better be good at memorization. So learn study skills of memorization, learn memory techniques, and you'll be good at it. Okay, so anyways, here's a quote about wisdom by George Vaillant. He wrote a bunch of books about, he was part of the Harvard longevity study on what gets people to age well. And one of his books was Triumph of Experience. So anyways, here we go. Wisdom is self-awareness without self-absorption. Ability to hear what others say, to grasp the deeper significance of transient phenomena, to consider issues from multiple perspectives, the capacity to appreciate paradox and irony, comfort with understanding that one must manage uncertainty and ambiguity. Yeah, there's always going to be a little bit of uncertainty. Get used to it. Okay? So again, what we're talking about is the ability to sort of have a bird's eye view of intellectual situations. And that reminds me of another quote, the Aristotle quote. What Aristotle said is, the key to an intelligent conversation is to first remove emotions. You just have to let it flow, let it go, let the subject matter build up, and then you'll gradually work towards a conclusion. Okay, top-notch intellectual development takes a lot of effort, so the student must love to study. And the way you love to study is you have to learn to love the subject. An example of that would be when I was in med school. Let's say I'm a third-year medical student. I have to rotate through a bunch of different things. Typical things are primary care rotations, internal medicine, general surgery, OB-GYN, pediatrics, and psychiatry. Those are the typical third-year medical student rotations. So every new rotation that I went into, I would all say to myself, maybe I'll go into this. Maybe I'll be an OB-GYN doctor. Maybe I'll be an internal medicine doctor. And the benefit of doing that was I was then very interested in learning the subject. And I would always try, we'd always have like a textbook to read, and we'd always have a test at the end. I would always try to get the highest grade in the class. Even if it didn't really matter that much, I would just, by always aiming high, I would do good. And don't get me wrong, when you aim high for medicine and excellence, it actually can backfire you and get you in trouble, but I didn't care. For example, when I rotated through peds, when I was an intern, I had another peds rotation. I decided I wanted to get good at doing procedures. I knew I was going to be an imaging-guided surgeon, so I would always do the hard cases. I would say, give me all the tough cases. The other residents would want to go home. They want to weasel out of a case. I go, give me your lumbar punctures. Whatever the difficult challenge was, give it to me. I want it. And that's how you get good. Okay? I'll tell you one more story along those lines. When I was a resident, a second-year resident, this time in the diagnostic radiology department, I wasn't that good at starting IVs because at the previous hospitals I worked, there was always somebody else to start them. And so I went and I kind of had a hard time with an IV, and I was all pissed off that I kind of sucked at it. So I said, how can I get good at this? Because I want to get really good at this. This is some skill that I should know how to do backwards and forwards. So what I did was I volunteered on my day off to go over to the blood lab and just draw blood on people. So I would draw blood on lots and lots of people, and I got good at it and I got comfortable with it. So I no longer felt awkward. And then what I did, whenever I was called to start an IV, I would say, call me for the tough ones. If I couldn't start an IV in the patient's arm or their wrist, I would start doing all kinds of weird things. I would start IVs in people's foreheads. I'd start them in their neck. I would start them in their legs, in their belly, in a varicosity or something. So I got to the point where if it was possible to get an IV, I would get an IV. And don't get me wrong, that's a minor skill. But what I'm trying to say is it's an attitude. This is important to me. I'm going to get good at it. I'll do whatever it takes. Okay, and that type of attitude, you get better at stuff faster. Okay, Charles Peirce, a quote, "In order to learn, you must have the desire to learn." And here's a nice one by Goethe. Johann von Wolfgang Goethe, the great genius German. He said, "To learn a topic, a complex topic, a man must love it." And I think that's because you go through a phase where when you first start out and begin to learn a subject, it's a lot of fun. You learn very rapidly, you rapidly make improvement, you see all the highlights of the field, it's great. But then you hit a plateau where you go flat for kind of a prolonged amount of time, and you have to pay your dues, do all the busy work, the tedium. And then what's nice about it, though, if you pay those dues, you'll eventually start accelerating your learning curve again, and you'll kind of learn the field pretty well. And then you hit another choice. So I just want to stagnate and maintain the status quo as a conformist practicing doctor, or do I want to become great? If you want to become great, what you have to do then is read in the fields next to it. And then you'll see it again from that bird's eye view, and then you can make a new discovery and you'll go up. That's what it takes to become great. So a good doctor knows their own field very well. A great doctor knows the fields next to their field and is able to come up with new ideas, new insights and invention. Here's a quote by Mozart. "True genius is more than lofty intelligence and imagination. Love, love, love. That is the soul of genius." Okay, so yeah, I love Mozart. I actually think the greatest movie ever made about creativity is Amadeus. So the Amadeus movie, it's awesome. The second best movie would be The Agony and the Ecstasy about Michelangelo, but Amadeus is the best. That's the personality of genius right there. I've been lucky enough to be around some geniuses in my life, and that fits pretty well. Amadeus, okay? Mozart. "I immerse myself in music. I think about it all day long." Yeah, Mozart, all kinds of sad, terrible things were happening, and chaos and poverty around him, and him, not having enough money for the rent, having to flee his apartment, and he was writing some of those most magnificent compositions of all time. Okay, next quote by Mozart. Oh, wait, hold on a second. No, this next quote is not Mozart. I think this is Schopenhauer. All right, let me scroll it up to Schopenhauer. "In genius, knowledge becomes the main thing, the aim of the whole life. In his own existence, on the other hand, declines to a subsidiary thing, a mere means. His mind needs to be constantly and vigorously occupied." Arthur Schopenhauer. And I can tell you, if you're serious about being a genius, you're going to want to read some Schopenhauer. I almost wish, when I have a daydream about what if I could live my life all over again. One of the things I wish is that I could read in German, so I could read Schopenhauer, so I could read Goethe. Those are the two mains I would want to read in German. I would read Nietzsche for fun, but he's a bit of a jerk. But Schopenhauer, and don't get me wrong, Schopenhauer's kind of crazy too. But Schopenhauer spent countless decades thinking about being a genius and doing genius level work. And that's why I love his advice. What I like about Goethe inspires you. He gives you energy. Okay. Nietzsche's just kind of funny, but Nietzsche I think is kind of pathetic. What I really think about Nietzsche, I think he was a homosexual, and I think that's partly why he was sort of jealous of Christianity. I think that's partly why he studied the ancient Greeks from that angle, that point of view. But Nietzsche is very entertaining, but he's overrated. He's full of crap in a lot of ways. Okay, when you start to read him and think about what is he really saying, his hero in life was Napoleon. Okay. Napoleon was a great genius, but he's also a big jerk, okay? All right, let's continue here. If you want to read an interesting book about Napoleon, read Napoleon's Master by, I think it's David Lauday or Daniel Lauday. It's a good book. Okay, all of King Arthur's knights wanted to obtain the Holy Grail, but only one could do it. Lancelot was the best knight at fencing and jousting, but he was too distracted by his rendezvous bonking with Guinevere and her body doubles. The great knight Tristram sold his soul to Isolde for trysts under a tree. Only Sir Galahad was willing to pay the price for earning the Grail. To succeed in your quest to become a genius, you must make yourself worthy of becoming a genius. You can have a girlfriend, but she should be a loyal Lucy and not a bipolar Betty. It is good for a young man to have a couple years with no girlfriend so that he can focus on learning. Yep, I've had a lot of young guys tell me, they're real frustrated in their college or their grad school that they don't have a girlfriend during that time, but I think that's okay. You need some time when you're single and just to really study, because we love women. They're a lot of fun. They're adorable, but they're a distraction. You got to take them out. You got to spend time with them. You got to be tuned into their feelings. And sometimes when you're just trying to achieve, it's best to focus on one thing. Okay, you must become a modern intellectual monk for a couple of years. Dante in the Divine Comedy had to pass through hell and purgatory before he could make it to heaven. Oh, by the way, I showed a painting. I gave a reference to the painting, Tristan and Isolde. Okay, continuing with the quote. You shall have to pass through intellectual hell, high school, and purgatory, college, grad school, to make it to heaven for independent creative work. Okay. And I do have a section later on where I go through the 25 commandments of being a genius. Okay. Because, I wanted to become a genius. And so I studied all these geniuses. And one of the things I learned is all of them have something sad and pathetic about their life. And all of them are a little bit crazy too. But you can't just, hate them for that, because if you do, you'll never get the good part. Okay. I liked Ben Franklin. Okay. Ben Franklin's biography, where he sort of decided he wanted to be a great man, and he built himself up. He taught himself how to write, and he wrote a bunch of practice letters and essays. He figured out how to make money, and he got rich by the time he's 38. Then he could retire and just do what he wanted. So he had a really cool life. He enjoyed his hobbies. He enjoyed his scientific experiments. He was also quite the ladies' man. We're not going to get into it right now, but he's got a lot of funny quotes about seducing women. You'd be surprised. There's a nice painting of him with some French ladies. Okay, so that's one of the key points. A genius must simplify their life so they can focus more energy on what matters to them, on studying their chosen field. Okay, now we're starting to get to some of the key points. Genius, this is Matthew Arnold quote, genius is mainly an affair of energy. And I would say there's a lot of truth in that. Because people will ask me, how do I write so many books? I work full time. How do I got time? I got, over like 3,600 videos. About, close to half of them are reruns. But I got, more than 2,000 originals. Videos. How do I do it? Write 22 books, work full time as a clinical doctor, very busy. And the secret is I don't do anything else. I'm pretty intensely focused. And I know how to generate my energy. Like I just published that recent book, Food, Mood, and IQ. I knew that when I moved, I was going to have no phone for a week or two. So what I did was I would work like 14 hours a day, 15 hours a day to finish that book. So I would have it done before I would lose my computer for a week or two with the moving. Because you have to be able to see the entire book in your head in order to make it coherent. So you can't take a week or two off and then you're going to need another week to get caught up and start again. So, but that energized me. That's where that energy came from. Okay, Thomas Fuller quote, a strong will, Matthew Arnold, the real difference between, this is a Thomas Fuller quote, the real difference between men is energy. A strong will with a settled purpose and invincible determination can accomplish almost anything. And this is the distinction between great men and little men. Okay, here's a quote by Ian Fleming, the author of the James Bond books. All of the greatest men are maniacs. All of the greatest men are maniacs. And I can tell you there's truth in that statement. I've known some guys that were great in their field, and they all were kind of maniacs. Dave Schultz was a maniac in his own way, the great Olympic champion wrestler. Mark Schultz was definitely a maniac in his own great way. Some of the academic geniuses I met were also kind of wild men in their own way, good and bad. And if you study the geniuses' lifetime, you will see that that's characteristic of them. They're just so energized, going and going and going in their field. It's like, how do they do it? Okay. Ian Fleming continues, they are possessed by a mania which drives them forward towards their goal. The great scientists, philosophers, religious leaders, all maniacs. What else but blind singleness of purpose could have kept them in the groove of purpose? Mania is as priceless as genius. Ian Fleming. So for any great achievement, you got to put a lot of energy in it, okay? Because there's a lot of stuff's been done in this world. And if you're going to do something better than what's been done already, you're going to have more energy than people had in the past and more thought to organize it and put it all together to do something great, to do something beautiful and good. So that's a key point. And that's another reason why you want to optimize your health. That's another reason why you want to exercise, so you have some physical fitness energy built into you. You got some oomph. That's what it takes. And you have to be psyched up. You say, yes, I want to do it. I can go for it. Because sometimes I would talk to myself. I would say, I can do it. I can do it. I kind of got that idea from Brian Tracy. He would say, you should talk to yourself. And I know it works, you know, because you'll have some big challenge coming up. And I would say to myself, I can do it. I can do it. I can do it. This is what matters. I know what I'm going to do. If it is to be, it is up to me. This is what I'm going to do. And I'd do a little mental practice of some big thing I had to do, and I would do it. Paul Russo quote, "Monomania can develop into genius as the individual delves deeper into the process, leaving normal parameters behind." Okay, so that's it for this video, and we'll just keep on going tomorrow. Hope that was helpful to you.